Today's story is about a woman who taught her brother-in-law a lesson for his offensive remarks and intimidation driven by jealousy towards her husband. It seems like both the brother-in-law and sister-in-law are quite problematic. She also mentioned that her parents-in-law have changed a bit, which suggests they might have realized something. What could have happened? Let's find out together. Please subscribe and like our channel.
I'm a woman in my late 30s, raising a child. I've been working at the same job since before I got married. And apart from my maternity leave, I've been continuously working. From the stories I've read, it seems like many people have had a hard time because of their in-laws. In this case, I'd like to talk about my own family. My husband has an older brother and sister, and I have one older brother. When you get married, you're supposed to form an independent household. But it seems like complete independence isn't easy in Korean culture. This is not only our case, but it seems to be the same for others as well. My in-laws are nice to me. My parents-in-law are like having another daughter. And they treat me better than their own children. When we eat at my in-laws' house, they ask my sister-in-law to do the dishes rather than the daughters-in-law. Then my brother-in-law and I argue over who will do the dishes. My father-in-law is more than 10 years older than my father, but he has a more modern mindset. Open-minded, shall I say? Anyway, when we meet with my in-laws' family, we always have a good time. Perhaps because they take after their parents. My uncle-in-law and sister-in-law love children. Children know who loves them. My child has loved their uncle and aunt since they were young. Seeing them often probably had some influence. My child would call any woman who showed them affection, aunt. They seemed to recognize any adult woman who loved them as their aunt. And any adult man who showed interest and affection was called Big Dad. Just like with the aunts. Any adult man who showed them affection was considered their big dad. You can see how much my uncle-in-law and sister-in-law love my child. Honestly, I'm grateful and happy for anyone who loves my child. Even if they're not nice to me. But my uncle-in-law and sister-in-law are also nice to me. When I talk to my brother-in-law, we often naturally say that it's a blessing to have such a family. The problem was with my own family. I grew up being discriminated against by my older brother. My brother was always the priority because he was a son. Even when I came home late from school and had to eat dinner, my mom would always prepare food for my brother. But I had to prepare my own. This is just one example of the discrimination I experienced. There were many other incidents where I felt discriminated against. But I won't go into detail because it would make this story too long. My husband and his siblings often tease and joke with each other. "You're lucky to be married to a woman like that," is something my sister-in-law often says to my uncle-in-law or my husband. My uncle-in-law and husband reply, "Because she's a little headstrong. We just accept it and live with it." I know these are jokes. But hearing them repeatedly, I think I might be becoming a little bit worse. There have been times when I was surprised to see myself starting to look down on my husband, whom I chose as my marriage partner because I thought he was a great man. So, I'm trying not to do that. My husband is a good son-in-law to my family as well. My family members are generally shorter, while his family members are all quite tall. My parents loved him just for his looks, especially my mother. My husband is tall and has a substantial build. So my mother always has a content look on her face when she sees him. My husband often acts like a playful youngest child, which made my mother love him even more. My older brother has a stern personality and sharp edges. My sister-in-law has a similar personality. My brother is 4 years older than me, but got married early, so when we got married, our oldest nephew was 5 years old. I found my brother and sister-in-law a bit intimidating. But I absolutely adored my nieces and nephews. My brother's family often visited our house. But I always wanted to see my nieces and nephews. I couldn't get along with my brother and sister-in-law that well. They always had a serious and sharp standard, and they made me feel uncomfortable with every word I said in front of them. So, they were not people I could feel comfortable with. Those adoring nieces and nephews of mine seemed to start treating me like my brother and sister-in-law as they grew older. No matter how much I loved my nieces and nephews, as they change, I found myself treating them with pretense. I hated that. It felt like my beloved nieces and nephews were distancing themselves from me. My parents' house is a 10-minute walk from ours, and my in-laws' house is almost an hour away by car. But we visited my in-laws more often than my parents. If I call my sister-in-law, we talk for quite a long time. But I hardly ever call my sister-in-law. My uncle-in-law lives a bit far away, but he often visits my in-laws' house. If my uncle-in-law's family is coming to my in-laws' house, I always go to my in-laws' house. My sister-in-law's family also comes. Even if my husband says it's annoying and wants to rest at home, I drag him to go. I like gatherings with my in-laws' family. As our child got older, if the aunt and big dad were coming to grandma's house, the child would cause a fuss to go. So I didn't even need to persuade my husband to go. I think we go to my parents' house about once a month on average. From the time we were newlyweds, we felt self-conscious when we went to my parents' house. When my brother's family said they were coming, we all gathered at my parents' house, and my husband led the atmosphere. When my husband joked around, my mother enjoyed it immensely. But my brother and sister-in-law didn't seem to feel the same way. My brother said that my husband is too lighthearted when he jokes around. He openly said this and made people feel uncomfortable. My brother and sister-in-law tried to discuss current affairs and politics. But my parents didn't want to talk about those things. When my husband tried to lighten the topic, my brother said something like, "Why are you wasting time talking nonsense?" My husband must have felt very uncomfortable. What really angered me was when my sister-in-law said my husband was immature. How could she say such a thing to her brother-in-law? It's not right to judge people by their alma mater. But my husband graduated from a university in Seoul, and my brother and his wife were a campus couple from a regional university. My husband's job is much better than my brother's. It's not that my husband has less knowledge about current affairs and politics than my brother and sister-in-law. And that's why he doesn't talk about those things. My husband gradually reduced the amount of talking. When we went to my parents' house, even my nieces and nephews seemed to be rude to me and my husband, and I felt like something was wrong. In this way, we each harbored negative feelings towards each other. And my brother even started picking fights with my quiet husband. Some time ago, I had to visit my parents' house, and found out that my brother's family was also there. Upon arriving, my husband was playing and joking around with our nieces and nephews. Suddenly, my brother said, "Why are you talking like that to the kids? You should act mature in front of them." I was instantly angered. But my husband responded, "Come on, brother, it's fun. I'm just playing with the kids." Then my sister-in-law stepped in and said, "It's not good for the children's education. Stop making those jokes." My husband looked upset and I was very angry. But I didn't know what to say, so I held my tongue. Then, my brother started talking about politics. He was talking as if he was educating our parents. So, I said to my brother, "Do you only have politics to talk about? Most of the things you say are wrong, and talking that way just shows your ignorance." My brother looked shocked, But my husband said, "Just leave him be. He believes that talking about politics is mature. He's not the type to listen to anyone else." He said that my brother and sister-in-law seemed desperate to show off. He asked why we had to have a current affairs discussion when we were gathering as a family. We should just eat delicious food and have light conversations. My brother's face turned bright red. My husband jokingly said, "Do you only talk about these things with your colleagues at work? They must not like it." I said to him, "It seems like you're jealous of my husband. Showing off your shallow knowledge by discussing current affairs is your way of expressing your inferiority complex. Are you upset because you graduated from a local university, and my husband graduated from a good university and works at a good company?" My brother and sister-in-law were speechless and just blushing. My mother told me to stop. I said I was just worried because my brother's social skills seemed to be lacking. My sister-in-law started to scream, asking what we were doing. I told her, "How can a daughter-in-law scream in front of her parents-in-law? Did you receive such a poor home education?" Seeing her scream because she couldn't carry on a conversation made me say, "It seems like it's going to be a long time before you mature." My father told everyone to stop, and after that, we didn't say much and then came back home. When we got home and talked with my husband, he said he had also been very upset because of my brother. He said he couldn't talk to me about it because he didn't want to seem narrow-minded. So I apologize. I told him that our parents should have stopped my brother from saying such things a long time ago. But they made the mistake because they treasure their son so much. My husband said he understood. I had a call with my mother that day, and she said my brother and sister-in-law left in a bad mood and asked if I could have held back. I told my mother that my brother was making nasty comments out of jealousy of my husband, and I asked what she was doing at that time. I said if she had said something to my brother earlier, today's incident would not have happened, and that my husband must have been quiet because he was upset. I told her this was discrimination among her children. My mother stayed silent. I told her I would not let my husband be discriminated against, as I had been discriminated against compared to my brother since we were young, and I hung up the phone. The next day, my mother called again and said she had a call with my husband. She apologized first, and my husband also apologized. I asked my husband why he apologized when he did nothing wrong, but my husband just smiled. Since then, when we visited my parents' house, my brother and sister-in-law did not make any odd comments. My father called my brother and said something. My husband said this, "I don't know why my brother-in-law wants to appear so superior. If he was really superior, people would treat him as such on their own. I don't know why he's so impatient. It must be very hard for my brother-in-law and sister-in-law. They want to be told they're the best, but that's not happening. It's clear that my brother-in-law and sister-in-law are people who can't get respect anywhere. They must be very sad because even their family, who they hoped would hold them up, can't do it anymore."
The author seems to be a person of substance, which is probably why she met a good husband. It seems like the brother-in-law is hollow inside, while the husband is a person full of substance.